In 1988, 7 years had passed since Ohio reinstated the death penalty. While no executions took place between 1981 and 1988, capital convictions in the state were piling up every month. When Ohioans to Stop Executions was founded, 95 individuals were already sitting on death row. Prior to OTSE's formation, several organizations already fought against the death penalty system in Ohio. Amidst the growth in capital convictions and the rising number of politicians who claimed their actions were tough on crime, leaders of the effort to repeal the death penalty came together to establish a statewide network. United behind their belief that justice did not come from capital punishment, organizations such as the Ohio Catholic Conference, the Ohio Council of Churches, the University of Akron Law School, the American Civil Liberties Union, and Amnesty International came together in Columbus to form an organization whose purpose was to end the use of capital punishment in the state of Ohio. Some of the founding members knew all too well the havoc the death penalty wreaked. Bob Domer, a former mortgage lender, was wrongfully convicted in 1963 for the murder of a man who had actually died of natural causes. He spent 17 months on death row before an appeals court overturned his conviction. During these early years, Bob was joined by leaders of various backgrounds at OTSE. Jim Tobin, the Associate Director for the Department on Social Concerns at the Catholic Conference of Ohio, Kay Windsor of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown, and Adele Shank, a public defender in Cuyahoga County, created a well-rounded leadership team and engaged a broad community of members for the new coalition. Working from the offices of the Catholic Conference of Ohio at 9 East Long Street in downtown Columbus, OTSE's leaders immediately focused on strengthening the network of advocates that existed across the state. A newsletter called the Stop It was drafted and sent quarterly to OTSE's members. By the time the Stop It was replaced by online communications years later, it had reached the homes of thousands of Ohioans who had pledged their support for repealing the death penalty. In 1989, OTSE coordinated an Ohio Interfaith Coalition and facilitated its participation in a national summit in Atlanta, Georgia. The Georgia Summit gathered leaders from around the country who spoke with one prophetic voice in the document, lighting the torch of conscience. Founder Bob Domer was elected to the executive board of the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. Bob's election was the start of OTSE's relationship as the Ohio affiliate of the National Coalition. The tradition of collaborating with NCADP and faith groups remains a hallmark of OTSE's organizing efforts. In 2003, religious leaders came together again to add their names to a letter sent to Governor Bob Taft, urging him to take steps towards eliminating the death penalty. 10 years later, this strong partnership of faiths continues to play an effective and integral role in building a statewide faith community against executions. While headquartered in the state's capital, OTSE soon had chapters and affiliates in Akron, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Miami Valley, Lorain County, Lake and Geauga counties, and Toledo. Every year, these chapters met for OTSE's annual membership conference to build a strategy together. From the stairs of the State House to the small churches and public spaces of Ohio, education continued throughout the 1990s and kept the issue alive. OTSE's coalition slowly began shifting the climate of the death penalty debate in Ohio. On his last days in office, Governor Richard Celeste, with the support of OTSE's public education campaigns, made history by commuting the sentences of 8 inmates who were sitting on Ohio's death row. In 1998, the state of Ohio had gone 17 years without putting a man to death. However, as the year began, an execution date came with it. Wilford Berry, a man with a traumatic history and severe mental illness, had been convicted of aggravated murder and volunteered to be executed. Ruling against experts who testified that Berry was not competent to make the decision, the Ohio Supreme Court affirmed his ability to become a volunteer. Amidst these legal proceedings, OTSE's established network allowed the organization to capture the attention of the media and the attention of the greater public. Rallies, interviews, and informational events spoke out against the execution of someone so mentally ill as Wilford Berry. By 2003, OTSE and the movement it had helped create in Ohio began attracting national attention. Equal Justice USA, an organization supporting criminal justice reform across the country, invited OTSE to participate in a high-level strategic planning meeting. As a result, OTSE leveraged what would become a nationwide effort to fight for a moratorium on executions in Ohio. OTSE's relationship with the National Coalition continued to bloom as NCADP led the nation in the efforts to abolish the death penalty. At the same time, OTSE began receiving grants to expand its educational efforts. With these funds, founder Jana Schroeder led OTSE in organizing a 17-day speaking tour to highlight the impacts the death penalty has on those who have lost a loved one to murder. The tour, named The Journey of Hope From Violence to Healing, brought murder victims' family members, exonerated death row inmates, and death row family members together and reached over 10,000 Ohioans. Though opponents of repealing the death penalty continued to contribute to a system riddled with geographical, racial, and economic biases, OTSE collected statistics alongside stories and provided public defenders, journalists, and citizen activists with the information needed to fight for reform and the tools needed to connect with a misinformed public. OTSE's collaboration with the National Coalition took on an increased importance at this time, as NCADP dedicated staff to expanding the role in strategic planning and evaluation of campaigns and tactics. OTSE benefited from specialized trainings and conferences hosted by NCADP, including the first Abolitionist Leadership Training Institute. Formerly made up of volunteers or part-time regional organizers, a growing membership body, fiscal, and institutional support allowed OTSE's board members to create a full-time staff position in 2007. The organization grew into its own offices in Cincinnati, with its first executive director. This dedicated staff member, soon to be complemented by the addition of regional field organizers, communications staff, and college interns, allowed OTSE the resources to proactively seek press coverage and policy changes in more concentrated and organized ways. With dedicated staff, OTSE began to leverage its statewide support in pressing members of Ohio's political system to take up the fight for abolition. When State Representative Ted Celeste looked to create a repeal bill, he counted on OTSE for support. The organization gathered witnesses to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee on the bill, which produced over 3 hours of arguments against capital punishment. Later that year, the Ohio Supreme Court created a task force to evaluate the fairness of Ohio's death penalty system, a step toward stopping executions in the state that OTSE has been intimately involved with. Information has also been collected and disseminated in new ways, with OTSE publishing its first annual report in 2013. For 25 years, OTSE has organized and fought for an Ohio that can claim a fair criminal justice system, one that is not stained with the death penalty's impracticability and injustice. While our board, staff, and members work for the day that they can celebrate the 25th anniversary of the death penalty's demise, we celebrate the strides made together towards repeal and the support that has been organized for the individuals and families that our system has harmed the most. Thank you for being a part of OTSE's history.